Why this speech? Why not another speech? Why am I going to talk about this? One of the things I find very amazing, I think you all know that at age 5, I was told I should never stand up in front of groups of people and talk, that I wasn't very good at it. And that has carried on throughout my life. So when I got to Toastmasters, I could stand up and teach, and I was actually pretty good at that. I was great at working with people in the class to get their ideas and bring them in and not have to lecture, because God help me if I had to lecture, because then I had to memorize something and I inevitably would forget what I had to say. What I found with Toastmasters, and I sort of appreciate this, writing a speech with purpose. What I do now is I sit down and I go, so what do I want my audience to know? What is the information that I want to pass to them this time? For example, I spoke a month or so ago about there were no women in Vietnam. What was my purpose? My purpose was to educate on the fact that we were denied the recognition that we should have had. There are only, count them, 8 women on the Vietnam Veterans Wall. There are over 5,000 men on that wall. Not saying that there weren't that many men there, but there were definitely more women than 8 who passed at that war. It took us until 1992 to get the Women's Vietnam Memorial Statue approved and blessed. That's ridiculous. But the purpose was to educate and to let you know what had happened. And hopefully, if you have it in your heart, to donate to the cause as well. I also sometimes have to do a speech about me and how I started speaking. And I told you about my grandmother. My first class that I ever taught, I read the notes. I had an evaluator in the back of the room who was sitting there going, ooh, I'm going to get fired. And I'm a second lieutenant, so they can't fire me too far. She went back and she said, you get one more chance and then we're going to change your job. Well, the next class I did was on interpersonal communications. You're teaching basic troops how to communicate with each other, how to live in a barracks together and not kill each other. And yes, there was a script. I went, I'm not going to do this. So I sat down and I looked at what's the purpose here? The purpose is to get them to communicate. Well, if they're not talking, they're not communicating. Instead of lecturing, I asked questions. I empowered them to have dialogue, to talk to each other, to talk about their issues, their concerns, what was good, what was bad, whatever. And my evaluator was in the back of the room. And I thought, she's going to hate this. At the end of the program, the troops got up, they turned around, they marched out in beautiful formation. Thank you to my drill sergeant. And I walked back and I said, so how did I do? She goes, that was amazing. Can you teach other people how to do this? I said, absolutely. And I said, and it's not just this program. There are other things that we can engage them in, because there was never a troop who fell asleep while I taught a class. And considering that these kids were up at maybe 3 in the morning, if they were lucky, they went to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. They probably got 2 hours of sleep. Never did they fall asleep. My purpose was to engage them. Now I do the same sort of thing. Every time I give a speech, For Toastmasters, I look at what's the purpose? What do I want the audience to gain from this? In this particular case, I want you to look at how many different ways can you get your message across, and what's the purpose of each of your speeches. It's not just what Toastmasters tells you it is, it's what you want that purpose to be. What do you want the audience to walk away with? What I want this audience to walk away with is to look at each of your speeches and to say, what do I want my audience to walk away with? And how can I best bring that out for them? Is it telling? I mean, I've gotten to the place where I love telling stories. I can tell you stories until the cows come home. And I can tell you about the cows coming home as well. I really want you to learn from those stories. And if you do that, then you will accomplish my purpose in giving that speech. So ladies, look at your next speech. What's the purpose, and how are you going to get it across to the wonderful Toastmasters that we get to speak to every month?